Welcome to the Hindu Daily. Today's deep dive is a continuous journey through 7 crucial stories from our sources, unpacking the hidden systems that shape our world. We will explore how underlying codes and mechanics, from AI algorithms and geopolitical backchannels to the molecular makeup of our food and bodies, are silently driving major global and local shifts.
Right, there is this entire invisible architecture running things behind the scenes.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. We are starting right in the invisible architecture of the internet, specifically with a new AI model from Anthropic called Mythos.
Yeah, Anthropic, the company behind the Claude family of language models, right? Like Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus.
You got it. And Opus had already built this massive reputation for its coding capabilities. It was actually finding software bugs that human reviewers had completely missed.
Which is already impressive.
It is, but Mythos is just, well, it's on an entirely different level.
Right.
It has reportedly found hundreds of severe security vulnerabilities in the legacy software that basically runs our entire digital infrastructure.
Hundreds of severe bugs. That's huge.
Right. But here is the catch. Anthropic is keeping Mythos locked down. They are only sharing it with a defensive cybersecurity consortium of about 40 companies. It's called Project Glasswing.
Okay, 40 companies out of the entire global tech sector.
Yeah, it includes tech giants like Apple, Microsoft, and Cisco. But isn't this like inventing the ultimate master key for the internet and then refusing to share it? I mean, why hide a tool that fixes things?
Well, look, it is entirely about managing a critical transitional window. The timeline is the real danger here.
How do you mean?
So if a tool that powerful is released to the general public, it does not just go to the cybersecurity professionals who are, trying to patch systems. It goes directly to the attackers, too.
Oh, right. The bad guys get the master key at the exact same time.
Exactly. If hackers get their hands on a Mythos-class model before those legacy systems are patched, the results across global IT infrastructure would just be catastrophic.
Total meltdown.
Pretty much. So Anthropic's logic with Project Glasswing is to give the companies that build the backbone of our digital world a head start. They need time to plug these vulnerabilities before the attackers inevitably build or gain access to similar capabilities.
So it's essentially a high-stakes race against time.
Absolutely.
But looking at the roster for Project Glasswing, there is a glaring omission. As of now, no Indian IT firm has been publicly listed as a partner.
None.
None. So if this master key is only being handed to a select club in Silicon Valley who is looking out for Indian IT infrastructure.
Well, the Indian government and the tech industry are highly aware of this exposure. While Indian companies might indirectly benefit when the global platforms they rely on, like Microsoft or Apple, are patched, their own bespoke software solutions and domestic networks remain vulnerable.
They are exposed.
Yeah. Vinayak Godse, the CEO of the Data Security Council of India under NASSCOM, stated they have been urgently holding meetings about the implications of Mythos.
What about the government level?
At the government level, the IT Ministry and the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, or CERTIN, they are actively studying the model's capabilities.
They must be scrambling.
They realize they have to prepare for a paradigm where AI can spot zero-day vulnerabilities faster than any human security team possibly could. And, while Anthropic's AI is being carefully locked down to prevent systemic chaos, over in West Bengal, we are seeing what happens when a new AI algorithm is actually unleashed on a massive democratic system.
Oh, this story. The scale of what is happening with the Election Commission of India's special intensive revision of the electoral rolls in West Bengal is just, it's difficult to wrap your head around.
The numbers are staggering. Yeah. Right.
The process started with 7.66 crore voters. By the draft rolls, over 63 lakh names had been deleted under the standard categories of absent, shifted, dead, and duplicate.
Which is a huge cleanup by itself.
Right. But then they deployed a new AI algorithm, and it flagged an additional 1.20 crore names for what it called logical discrepancies.
Flagging 1.20 crore names in a single state is an administrative earthquake. The algorithm wasn't just looking for simple duplicates, right?
No, not at all. It was operating on a highly specific 5-point criteria that ended up catching millions in its net. And the criteria were bizarrely rigid.
What kind of criteria?
Well, it looked for spelling differences between the 2002 and 2025 rolls. It flagged cases where more than 6 voters were linked to a single ancestor.
Okay, so large families get flagged automatically.
Yes, and it scrutinized age gaps. Like if the age difference between a voter and their parent fell outside a 15 to 45-year range, or if the gap with a grandparent was less than 40 years, it flagged you.
Wow.
It even flagged instances where a voter's gender did not align with the database's assumption of their name. Imagine getting logged out of your bank account because of a typo, but instead, it is your constitutional right to vote.
Yeah, the rigidity of those parameters created a complete institutional stalemate. You had about 60 lakh cases where the local electoral registration officers and micro-observers simply could not agree on whether these flagged voters were legitimate.
The local officials were just paralyzed.
Right. The trust broke down entirely. That put 60 lakh people in an under-adjudication category, effectively suspending their voting rights pending verification.
And it got so bad the Supreme Court had to step in, right?
It did. The stalemate became so intractable that it required extraordinary intervention from the Supreme Court. A three-judge bench headed by Chief Justice of India, Surikant, requested the deployment of serving and retired judicial officers to take over this massive quasi-judicial task.
It is hard to fathom nearly 700 judicial officers from West Bengal, Odisha, and Jharkhand leaving their regular duties just to comb through election lists.
Because the local machinery just ground to a halt.
Yeah. Ultimately, those judicial officers struck down 27 lakh of those 60 lakh names. For those whose names were not cleared, the ECI has set up 19 special tribunals.
But will they be processed in time?
Probably not. Because the electoral rolls are frozen for the upcoming assembly elections, it is highly unlikely those individuals will be able to vote, barring any new developments from upcoming Supreme Court hearings. In total, a staggering 90.8 lakh names have been deleted from the pre-revision 2025 list.
And obviously, the political environment surrounding this massive deletion is, as you would expect, highly polarized. You've got two entirely conflicting narratives about the integrity of the process.
Yeah, and we're just looking strictly at the claims from the parties involved here. Trinamool Congress and Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, who actually personally appeared before the Apex Court. They claim the ECI is actively trying to disenfranchise their loyal voters.
And we're seeing similar claims from civil society activists, right?
We are. Yogendra Yadav publicly criticized the process. He cited an example in Nandigram, where he claims that despite Muslims making up 25% of the voters, they accounted for 95% of the deletions. He also alleged that women in Matua-dominated areas have been specifically targeted by the algorithm's parameters.
Conversely, the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is the main opposition in the state, has strongly defended the cleanup process.
They see it as a necessary step.
Exactly. They are fully supporting the ECI's efforts, stating this algorithm is a necessary tool to finally remove widespread duplicates and identify illegal immigrants on the voter rolls. The entire technical exercise has now morphed into the central electoral plank for the upcoming assembly polls.
That kind of deep institutional stalemate where trust completely fractures and an external power has to step in to mediate is exactly what is playing out right now on the global stage.
Yeah.
But with ballistic missiles instead of ballots.
The Middle East situation.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. Picture this scene unfolding in Islamabad. You have U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner sitting down with the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf.
In Islamabad.
Yes. They are actively negotiating a permanent U.S.-Iran ceasefire.
So this summit is the culmination of that 2-week temporary truce we saw, which itself was preceded by some, let's call it intense, unconventional back-and-forth diplomacy.
Yeah, unconventional is the word for it. It all started with a social media post, right?
It ultimately catalyzed around a Truth Social post by Donald Trump setting an April 7 deadline. He proposed a double-sided ceasefire where Washington would halt attacks in exchange for Tehran agreeing to reopen the vital Strait of Hormuz for global shipping.
It's a massive geopolitical shift. But the immediate question that jumps out for you looking at this is the location. I mean, why are the highest levels of the U.S. and Iranian governments holding this critical summit in Pakistan?
Well, Pakistan has a quiet but highly established history of serving as an intermediary for complex U.S. diplomatic initiatives.
Really? Like when?
They facilitated the groundbreaking U.S.-China outreach back in 1971, and more recently, they hosted the framework for the 2020 Doha Accord between the U.S. and the Taliban.
Okay, so they have a track record of hosting these sensitive talks.
Exactly. In this current Middle East conflict, while Pakistan publicly condemned Israel's military actions, their civilian leadership was careful to maintain open communication channels with Iran, the Gulf monarchies, and Washington.
But civilian channels alone wouldn't be enough to broker a deal with Iran's military apparatus, especially after all the recent escalations.
You're completely right, and that is where the military back channel became essential. Pakistan's military leader, Field Marshal Asim Munir, utilized deep-rooted connections with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC.
So it was military to military diplomacy.
Yes, earning the IRGC's direct consent was an absolute prerequisite for any ceasefire to hold, particularly following the power vacuum left by the assassination of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Pakistan was uniquely positioned to bridge that specific military-to-military gap.
But bringing the U.S. and Iran to the table is only half the battle, because the broader international reactions are making this incredibly volatile. Israel's leadership has reacted to this ceasefire with intense anger.
They felt sidelined.
Exactly. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's political rivals have pointed out he wasn't even consulted by the Americans before the summit was announced. Israel's explicitly stated strategic objective in the region was regime change in Iran. So a permanent U.S.-negotiated ceasefire directly undercuts that goal.
And we saw that anger manifest immediately. Right after the temporary ceasefire was announced, Israel launched a massive bombing campaign against nearly 100 targets in Beirut, claiming they were Hezbollah centers,
which threatened to derail the whole thing.
It was a move widely interpreted as an attempt to provoke an Iranian retaliation and break the fragile truce before the Islamabad summit could even begin.
Yet Iran held firm.
Yeah.
They stuck to the ceasefire conditions, even while publicly stating they wouldn't abandon their allies in Lebanon. And it seems like there's a massive global push to protect this negotiation.
Oh, absolutely. The international community is throwing its weight behind the Islamabad talks. Italy and Spain openly condemn the Beirut bombings and urge full support for the Pakistan-led negotiations.
And the Gulf states, too.
Right. The Gulf Cooperation Council states are actively backing the de-escalation. Perhaps the strongest signal of coordinated global involvement was Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif actually sharing the final trilateral draft of the ceasefire with global leaders.
That's moving forward.
The talks have now advanced past political posturing and into expert-level negotiations involving military, economic, and nuclear specialists. And, if we connect this international conflict over resources and strategic shipping straits to a different kind of global dependency, it brings us to a quiet vulnerability here in India regarding crucial scientific materials. And, well, a lab breakthrough that might change the equation.
We're talking about the Alchemist's aluminum. This is a fascinating study published in Nature by researchers at the Southern University of Science and Technology in Shenzhen. It was led by Professor Liu Liu.
The Alchemist's aluminum, that's a great name for it.
To strip away the heavy chemistry jargon, think of it like turning lead into gold. Except here, they are taking cheap, incredibly abundant aluminum and chemically tricking it into acting like extremely rare, expensive metals. Things like palladium, rhodium, and platinum.
Tricking the aluminum, how does that work?
They do this by binding a specific molecule called a carboxylyl ligand to the aluminum atom, and this forces it to behave differently. It allows the aluminum to build the complex hydrocarbon rings through a process called alkene cycle trimerization.
Okay, building hydrocarbon rings.
Right, and those rings form the foundation of our pharmaceuticals and agrochemicals.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is all about how these metals handle electrons. Transition metals like palladium and platinum are the absolute workhorses of global industry.
Because they're flexible.
Exactly. They are highly prized because they easily shift their oxidation states. That means they can temporarily give up or take on electrons without destabilizing. This electron shuffling dance is what breaks old chemical bonds and forms new ones. It's called Redox catalysis.
But aluminum doesn't naturally do that.
No. Aluminum, by contrast, is notoriously stubborn. It surrenders its outer electrons and becomes so rigid it refuses to participate in this necessary electron exchange. So forcing aluminum to mimic the flexibility of a transition metal is a fundamental disruption in chemical science.
But as with any major scientific leap, there is a catch.
Yeah.
The researchers measured the efficiency of this process using something called a turnover number, or TLN. It's basically how many product molecules a single catalyst molecule can create before it dies.
So what was the number for this new aluminum?
This new aluminum catalyst hit a ton of 2,290.
Okay.
Now, Dr. Sakya Sen from the National Chemical Laboratory in Pune pointed out that while 2,290 is a brilliant academic milestone, a real-world factory floor needs that number to be in the tens or hundreds of thousands.
That is a massive gap.
It is. Furthermore, this tricked-out aluminum is highly sensitive to air and moisture. So if this is just a delicate proof of concept trapped in a controlled lab, why should you, the listener, care right now?
Because of what Dr. Swathin Mandal from ISER Kolkata highlighted about global supply limits, he noted that the Earth's accessible reserves of these essential transition metals will be severely depleted within the next 100 years.
100 years. That's nothing on an industrial scale.
Right. The global industry is running on a ticking clock.
And India imports almost the entirety of its demand for palladium, platinum, and rhodium to feed its massive pharmaceutical and agricultural sectors.
Precisely. India's ability to manufacture vital drugs and fertilizers is entirely tethered to these expensive, imported, and rapidly disappearing metals.
Which makes us highly vulnerable to supply chain shocks.
Exactly. This Shenzhen discovery, fragile as it currently is, represents the seed of absolute industrial independence. It proves that we can take a metal that India possesses in massive abundance aluminum and train it to do the job of the rarest elements on Earth.
It's a stepping stone.
Yes. Bridging the gap between a sterile lab and an industrial factory will take decades of investment, but the mechanism to break that global supply chain dependency now theoretically exists.
Now, while scientists are working in labs to create stable chemical foundations for our industries, there are forces working in the shadows, trying to intentionally destabilize our social foundations. We need to look at a deeply concerning situation unfolding in Punjab.
The statue desecrations.
Yes. In the quiet village of Nurpur-Jatan, in Hoshiarpur district, a statue of Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar, which was enclosed in glass, was desecrated. The glass has been repaired, and 2 police officers now guard the statue around the clock. But this is far from an isolated incident.
It's part of a broader trend.
Exactly. Across Punjab, where scheduled castes make up about 32% of the population, a dark pattern is emerging. We have seen statues vandalized or defaced in Amritsar, Philar, Phagwara, Patiala, and Frodkat.
What elevates this from random vandalism to a coordinated security threat is who is actually claiming responsibility for these acts.
Who is it?
Gurpatwant Singh Pannan, the head of the New York-based Sikhs for Justice, which, by the way, is a designated unlawful association in India. He openly claimed responsibility for the Nurpur-Jatan incident. And he coupled that claim with messaging actively urging Dalits to abandon Ambedkar's constitutional legacy.
But when you listen to the people actually living in these villages, the human element tells a powerful story of resistance to this artificial division. Local residents like Balber Kaur and Gurbash Kaur emphasize how their village has historically been united across different sects and religions.
They don't want this division.
No. The village head, Shingararam, is actively demanding concrete steps from authorities to maintain safety. But it was the words of a village elder, Mahinder Singh, that really crystallized the psychological tool for me. He said, "When such incidents happen once, it is an accident. When they keep happening, it becomes a pattern, and patterns breed mistrust."
And that engineered mistrust is the exact sociological mechanism these groups are trying to trigger. Experts like Professor Manjit Singh, the former head of the Department of Sociology at Punjab University, and Shashi Kant, a former Punjab Director General of Police, break down exactly how this works. This is calculated polarization politics. Agencies operating from abroad are identifying hyper-local fault lines in this case, the complex historical and economic dynamics between Jat Sikhs and Dalit communities, and exploiting them.
So they are targeting statues in remote areas specifically to manufacture an ethnic conflict.
Yes, that is the goal. By attributing the defacement of Dalit icons to pro-Khalistan groups, the underlying objective is to pit these two communities against each other. It is an attempt to fracture the social cohesion of the state.
Right before an election cycle.
Exactly. With the Punjab Assembly elections approaching in 2027, creating an environment of communal mistrust and a pervasive atmosphere of fear gives these antisocial elements a wedge issue to exploit.
The political response across the spectrum has been loud, with each party pointing the finger in a different direction. Paramjit Singh Kainth of the BJP, scheduled to cast Morcha, blames the state government's lack of capability, stating local authorities are turning a blind eye. He has demanded a high-level investigative committee to dismantle the local networks executing these acts.
What is the ruling party saying?
Punjab Finance Minister Harpal Singh Chima of the ruling Aam Aadmi Party points directly to the foreign actors claiming responsibility from abroad. He is formally demanding that the Union Home Ministry intervene to bring these international elements to justice.
And the local community leaders.
Meanwhile, the Bahujan Samaj Party, led locally by Gurnam Singh, has initiated sit-in protests. They claim that both the state and central governments are failing in their fundamental duty to protect the dignity of Baba Sahib, threatening to intensify their agitation if arrests aren't made.
That creeping threat of bad actors operating in the dark to fracture a community brings us to a different kind of invisible threat, one happening right inside local shops and kitchens, driven by entirely different motives. We are looking at Hyderabad's escalating war on food adulteration.
Oh, the descriptions emerging from these raids are incredibly visceral. The reporting opens at the Giaguda slaughterhouse in Hyderabad. It had recently been sealed by civic authorities for severe hygiene and pollution violations, only to be forcibly reopened by a local legislator who actually broke the official seal.
Just broke the seal to keep it running.
Yeah. And that incident catalyzed a massive crackdown. Following a detailed briefing by Hyderabad Police Commissioner V.C. Sajanar, the city formally launched HFAST. That's the Hyderabad Food Adulteration Surveillance Team.
And the stories pouring in from everyday consumers are deeply unsettling.
They really are. Take M. Priyadarshini. She bought a birthday cake and donuts on discount from a local store for her 6-year-old son, and her entire family fell violently ill.
From a bakery.
Police traced the bakery items to a cramped, unregulated unit in Kadanan that was using rotten eggs and unauthorized chemical additives. Or take V. Rishab, who bought a buy one, get one free packet of ginger garlic paste.
Let me guess, it wasn't ginger or garlic.
Nope. It turned out to be manufactured in horrific conditions using synthetic colors and waste material. We aren't just talking about a restaurant cutting corners here. This looks like an illicit industrial-scale counterfeiting operation. I mean, it's like finding out the Matrix is made of rotten code. How is this happening so extensively when the city has an estimated 80,000 restaurants to monitor?
Honestly, the sheer volume of 80,000 restaurants is exactly why this shadow supply chain exists. The demand for cheap raw materials is insatiable. We are witnessing the deep industrialization of food fraud.
Industrialization. That's a scary word for food.
It is. It is no longer just a local eatery with an expired safety license. Authorities are dismantling highly organized, unregulated manufacturing factories hidden right inside residential neighborhoods.
What kind of scale are we talking about for these shadow factories?
Take paneer, for example. Hyderabad consumes roughly 15,000 kilograms of paneer every single day. Producing that naturally requires nearly 1 lakh liters of milk.
That is a lot of milk.
It is. So to bypass the immense cost of dairy, police raids are uncovering massive illicit operations that blend cheap milk solids with palm oil to create an imitation product.
Palm oil instead of milk.
Yes. And this fake paneer is then sold loose to restaurants and caterers without any disclosure to the public. DCP Vaibhav Gaikwad and Inspector N. Ranjit Kumar Gaud pointed out that deliberate misbranding is rampant across the board.
What else are they faking?
Vegetable oil frozen desserts are being passed off as dairy ice cream, and seasonal fruits like mangoes are being flooded with dangerous, excessive amounts of the ripening agent ethylene just to hit the market faster.
And then there is the systemic failure of the cold chain. Right.
Yeah.
The cold chain is supposed to be the unbroken system of refrigeration, keeping perishable foods safe from the factory to your plate.
But it's breaking down.
Exactly. The police are finding bulk meat that legally must be stored between -18 and -40 degrees Celsius, being kept at vastly higher temperatures. That destroys the integrity of the meat and massively increases the risk of severe bacterial contamination. But the authorities simply cannot monitor every freezer in the city.
Which is why the strategy has shifted. What is truly interesting is that 30 to 40% of these successful police raids are now driven directly by citizen tips.
Oh, so the public is getting involved.
Yes, the HFAST initiative is urging the public to become hypervigilant. They want consumers to relentlessly check labels, demand accurate ingredient lists, and most importantly, seriously question absurdly cheap prices.
If a deal seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. The economic advantage providing incredibly cheap ingredients to restaurants is the only reason this adulterated supply chain survives. If consumers reject the suspiciously cheap options, the illicit factories lose their market.
And that brings us to the ultimate destination of all this food, our bodies. As civic authorities battle what goes into our food supply, millions of individuals are turning to a chemical revolution to battle what that food does to their metabolisms. We're talking about the explosive rise of the Ozempic revolution here in India.
The personal transformations people are experiencing on these drugs are undeniably dramatic, and they are driving a massive cultural shift.
Yeah, we see stories like Mukta Tand, a television producer from Mumbai. She lost 22 kilograms and now has to take 20 pairs of jeans to the tailor for alterations. Or Bollywood filmmaker Hansal Mehta. He dropped to 73 kilograms and now boasts a metabolic age of 43, despite actually being 57 years old.
Those are incredible results.
They are. Now, the financial cost of this transformation is significant. These GLP-1 receptor agonist injections run about 8,000 to 10,000 rupees a month. However, new generic versions are rapidly entering the Indian market at around 3,500 to 4,500 rupees, making it far more accessible. So what does this all mean? How are these expensive injections actually rewriting human appetite?
The mechanics are fascinating. These drugs chemically mimic a natural metabolic hormone in your body. When injected, they stimulate insulin production, drastically reduce glucagon, and massively slow down how fast your stomach empties.
So you literally stay full longer.
Yes, but their most profound effect is neurological. They cross into the brain and completely silence what is now universally being called food noise.
Food noise.
Yeah, that constant low-level mental chatter and anxiety about hunger, cravings, and your next meal, it just turns it off.
I have to push back on this framing, though. I mean, it sounds like a magic wand for weight loss. But wait, we have a severe parallel epidemic in this country. The data shows we have 172 million undernourished people, yet the pharmaceutical market is simultaneously being flooded with weight loss generics from major companies like Sun Pharma. Isn't there a massive biological catch to just turning off your appetite?
There is a very severe biological catch, and what's fascinating here is how uniquely dangerous it is for the Indian population specifically.
Why India specifically?
The danger lies in a condition called sarcopenic obesity. It was famously termed the thin fat Indian by Dr. Chittaranjan Yajnik. Unlike in many Western countries where obesity is often a case of overall metabolic excess, Indian bodies frequently feature dangerously low muscle mass combined with higher fat mass, particularly concentrated around the abdomen.
So why are our bodies predisposed to store fat that way while simultaneously losing muscle?
Dr. Ramesh Hariharan from Strand Life Sciences framed it perfectly. He said, "Genetics loads the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger."
That's quite a quote.
It is. Indians have a deep genetic predisposition, which is compounded by generations of fetal undernourishment and epigenetic factors. Our bodies essentially evolved to hoard fat abdominally as a survival mechanism, while retaining very thin limbs with low muscle density.
So how does a drug like Ozempic, which basically makes you simply stop eating, interact with a body that already has critically low muscle mass?
That is exactly where the crisis begins. These GLP-1 drugs alchemize weight loss exceedingly fast. But they don't just burn fat, they cause a rapid, indiscriminate shriveling of muscle mass as well.
Oh, so you lose muscle right along with the fat.
Yes. Mukta herself referred to her early, unsupervised experience on the drugs as feeling like death by muscle loss before she radically adjusted her lifestyle. Because the Indian population already suffers from endemic low muscle mass and widespread systemic protein deficiency, chemically silencing the appetite without strict clinical nutritional oversight is incredibly risky.
It's risky enough that it actually prompted legal action, right? Jitendra Chouksey, a fitness evangelist, filed a public interest litigation in the Delhi High Court. He argued fiercely against the fast-tracked approvals and the rampant unsupervised use of these drugs in unregulated wellness clinics.
And he has a very valid point. The consensus among leading endocrinologists is clear. The drug can successfully quiet the neurological food noise, but it cannot build the muscle tissue required for actual long-term metabolic health.
We still have to put in the work.
Exactly. Without a meticulously planned high-protein diet and rigorous, consistent strength training, introducing the GLP-1 revolution to the Indian genetic profile could trigger a catastrophic, widespread protein deficiency crisis.
A quick fix causing a bigger systemic problem.
Precisely. And that underlying reality brings us to a final thought for you to consider today. Across all 7 stories we explored, we see humanity desperately searching for patches. Yes. We are looking for an advanced AI model to patch our vulnerable digital code. We look for external global mediators to patch our fractured geopolitics. We deploy the Supreme Court to patch a broken electoral algorithm, and we use a weekly injection to patch our failing metabolisms.
It's all about finding that quick fix.
Right. But as the stories on our unique genetics and the unyielding realities of chemistry show, a patch can never truly replace the hard, fundamental, and often tedious work of building healthy, resilient systems from the ground up.
Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.